Good evening, constant reader. Tonight, we are going to do a good old-fashioned top 10 list of the scariest Stephen King stories of all time. At least they're scary to me. Unlike my usual videos that dive deep, this one is going to be spoiler-free. So, if you are looking for a dark tale to give you the shivers, then please consider any of these panic-inducing tales. Let's start with number 10, Grandma. 11-year-old George Bruckner is left alone in the house with his grandmother, who has been at death's door for months. What could possibly go wrong? So many things. This supernatural tale is a slow burn, but once it gets going, it gets dark. It taps into many different childhood fears, and even if you're reading as a grown-up, it might rekindle more than a few long-forgotten phobias. So many of King's stories are connected to one universe, and this one is no different. I didn't notice it at first, but a book club member pointed out that there is a cameo with the mother of Frank Dodd from The Dead Zone. I always love a good kingly crossover. So thanks for catching it, fellow constant readers. Grandma, by the way, was adapted into an episode of the 1980s Twilight Zone, which was decent, but it was also made into a full-length film titled Mercy, which I have been told is awful. But I haven't seen it yet. Eventually, it will be reviewed on Spooky Time with Bradford and Bradford. In the meantime, let's go over to number 9. They keep making Children of the Corn movies and sequels and reboots, and I have only seen the first disappointing film, though I have heard that all of the others are even worse. But we're talking about the story. The story is worth reading. There is something so wonderfully unnerving about the original by Stephen King that takes place in the remote and seemingly abandoned town of Gatlin, Nebraska. The pace is perfect, and the payoff is both fascinating and terrifying. If Grandma taps into our childhood fear of the elderly, then Children of the Corn taps into our adult fear of kids. Did I say that the first movie was a disappointment? It's not all bad. After all, this guy is iconic.
Question me not, Malachi. I act according to his will.
Next up on our creepy countdown, number 8 happens to be a short story that was not made into a movie, at least not yet. But if they ever do, they'll need to cast a very athletic actress for the title role, because our protagonist does a lot of running. And with good reason. This is a chase story of the cat and mouse good versus evil variety. And it's also a psychological thriller without any supernatural or science fiction elements. It's a down-to-earth nail-biter. I first experienced The Gingerbread Girl on audiobook as I was driving across country. With every page narrated by Mare Winningham, I was clenching the steering wheel, white-knuckling it until I finally learned the fate of the Gingerbread Girl. By the way, for this list, I am not including the novellas, so we're only looking at stories under 40,000 words. For the record, if I did include novellas, The Mist would be at the top of this list. But that's for another video. Moving on to number 7, The Night Flyer. Sure, there are other blood-chilling vampire tales, but this one contains the most vivid mental image burned into my brain, and it's all thanks to the twisted imagination of Mr. Stephen King. Based on that one image, which I'm not going to spoil, this story earns a place on the list. But in addition to that image, this is an exciting story about a tabloid reporter attempting to uncover the whereabouts of a mysterious serial killer. That journalist character, Richard Dees, is also featured in The Dead Zone. He's the inside view reporter who is doubtful of John Smith's psychic ability. So in The Night Flyer, it is very fun to see this skeptic character continue his journey into the realm of the bizarre and the supernatural. Number 6, The Man in the Black Suit. This one is slightly more literary than some of the other selections. In fact, it has won several accolades, including the O. Henry Award. There are moments when King's prose follows in the footsteps of other great American authors, Steinbeck, Bradbury, even a little bit of Mark Twain. And this story is one of those times. So yes, the prose is some of King's best, but at its core, this is still a tale of terror, and King delivers the chills. You see, the man in the black suit is the type of monster who not only looks at you as if you are a meal, but it wants to play with its food before devouring you whole. In some ways, this taps into the same fears we see in It. We have a child who is alone in the great outdoors, and he encounters a sinister presence. But what that so-called man in the black suit actually is, well, that is open to interpretation. But the bottom line for me, at least, he's scary. Number 5, Survivor Type. I said there'd be no spoilers, but let me offer advice. Do not read this story on a full stomach. During an interview with Stephen Colbert, Stephen King said,
"My favorite short story would be called Survivor Type, which was about a physician who gets stranded on a little island and he's smuggling heroin.
I like it, for the whole family. Okay, 1.
That is family friendly, yeah.
Yes.
That could be a Disney cartoon.
Sure.
As the title suggests, this is a tale of survival, and it explores the question, how far would you go to stay alive? Now, I never really liked the narrator protagonist, and yet each time I read Survivor Type, I always have sympathy for him. I haven't seen this yet, but they adapted this into an episode of Creepshow. It is animated instead of live action, so maybe it's more digestible. Number 4, The Boogeyman. This is from the Night Shift collection. Like a lot of Generation Xers, I read Stephen King way too young. But don't worry, I'm completely normal. That's why I spend all my time making these YouTube videos. Anyway, The Boogeyman did not scare me as a preteen. But after I became a dad and reread this story, I discovered that The Boogeyman is highly disturbing. It's not just the boogeyman that keeps me up at night. It's the choices of the main character, a father with 3 small children to protect. Ugh, I get creeped out just thinking about this one. So, if you want to glimpse every parent's nightmare, read The Boogeyman. Oh, and since we've been mentioning movie adaptations, the 2024 Boogeyman is almost like a sequel because it takes place after the events of the story. It's worth checking out, but not until you read the original. So there you go. You got your homework. Before we crack open the top 3, I wanted to announce some honorable mentions. Crouch End, Jerusalem's Lot, and Inn are all filled with freaky Lovecraftian fun. So, if you like the idea of classic King playing around with Cthulhu mythos, give them a read, if you dare. And I also want to give a shout out to The Moving Finger. This story might not be as scary as the others, but I can't look at a drain without imagining a finger poking out of it. And now, on with our final trio. And I have placed 1408 as my number 3 choice. I love tales of haunted hotels, and 1408 feels like a fun-size version of The Shining. Our main character has made a living writing about haunted locations even though he no longer believes in ghosts. That skepticism, however, is quickly challenged when he checks into the Dolphin Hotel. This story is fast-paced and freaky, and the premise inspired me to start making strange resort videos on this channel. So thank you, Mr. Mike Enslin. The film version of this is also enjoyable, but you can expect a lot of deviations from the original text. In fact, the filmmakers couldn't quite make up their mind, apparently, so they gave this movie a couple different endings. In second place, for the scariest Stephen King story, we have The Jaunt. This is a science fiction story, and it's not all that frightening in the traditional sense. There's no ghosts or goblins, no serial killers or sewer clowns. But with The Jaunt, we reach a conclusion that fills me with so much dread. I don't want to drop an F-bomb and get demonetized, so I'll use some profanity from The Good Place and say that The Jaunt forks with my mind, and every time I read it, I get more forked up. That's all I'm going to tell you. I will add that it has not yet been made into a movie, and I hope it is never adapted for the screen or for TV because I think it is perfect as a short story. And speaking of perfection, number 1 on my personal list of scary Stephen King stories is The Raft. This can be found in the Skeleton Crew collection. I read it as a kid, and now I cannot swim in a lake without vividly remembering the terrifying descriptions that are in this book. It features what to me is hands down the most disturbing death scene in King's short stories. This taps into all sorts of fears. Being trapped out in the open, being in deep bodies of water, or water where you can't see the bottom, being hunted for food. There, maybe I've said too much. The film Creepshow 2 opens with The Raft, and it strikes many of the right spine-tingling chords. But as I mentioned in my deep dive video, the movie cannot compare with the psychological realism and literary imagery that makes this such a captivating page-turner. So if you have not yet read The Raft, go to your local library, read it, and let me know if it's at the top of your list. And let me know what you think. Not just about The Raft, but of any of Stephen King's scary stories, because that, fellow constant readers, is my current top 10 list. It is very subjective, because we've all got our own pet fears and individual tastes for terror. And with that in mind, I invite you to leave a comment below and share your scariest Stephen King story. Let us know how old you were when you read it, and let us know how it tapped into some of your personal fears. Also, let me know which stories should have made the list. I'm always looking for another story to keep me awake at night. In the meantime, thank you for watching and listening to the Stephen King Book Club. Enjoy the rest of your summer, constant readers.